What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be comparing the new Motorola Moto G stylus to the LG Stylo 6. Now, both of these phones really are the only sort of mid-range or budget devices that still offer a built-in stylus. So if you're specifically looking for that in a smartphone, you're likely considering one of these options. The Moto G stylus, of course, just got refreshed for 2021, so we are checking out the latest version of this phone. The Stylo 6, on the other hand, has been out for a while, but it'll probably be a few more months at least before we get a Stylo 7 or any sort of update here. For now though, let's go ahead and see how these phones stack up, and hopefully this will help you decide if maybe either one of these devices is right for you. Now, in regards to pricing and availability, we already have some things to consider. The new Moto G stylus right now retails unlocked for $299, and while it hasn't yet hit too many prepaid or carrier networks, if and when it does, that price should come down a little bit. The Stylo 6, on the other hand, also technically has a full retail price of $299 unlocked, but since it's been out for a while, places like Amazon have it discounted down to $269 and sometimes even lower than that, and it's widely available on a number of prepaid and carrier networks at steep discounts as well. Either way you go, you'll likely be paying a bit less for the Stylo 6, which makes sense. And if you guys are interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own, I'll leave some links down below in the video description to all the deals and discounts for these two phones. Physically, these two devices now look even more similar than ever, and that mainly has to do with the big size increase on this new Moto G stylus. They're both now 6.8-inch devices. That's the screen size anyway. They are obviously very tall, more than anything else, but I think you can tell that the Stylo 6 is still just a bit bigger of a device overall. The Stylo 6 has thicker bezels all around and quite a bit larger of a bottom chin. In addition to that, the body of the Stylo 6 is also a bit thicker and boxier, so in the hand, it's the chunkier phone in every way. Both of these phones, though, obviously are just very big, which is great in one sense, plenty of screen real estate to utilize, but one-handed use is going to be a stretch for some people no matter which way you go. I will say though that the curvy contour design of the new Moto G stylus feels a bit better in the hand than that flat boxy profile of the Stylo, so that could be something worth considering as well. The thinner feeling profile of the Moto G stylus makes things just a little easier. Since these devices do fall in this sort of budget or mid-range space, they are mostly plastic builds, but with pretty different approaches. The Moto G stylus has been redesigned a bit versus last year with a shiny polished chrome frame, and this matches the shiny Stylo 6 almost completely. On the back, Motorola went with a simple approach, while LG certainly added some flair to say the least, with a shiny color shifting finish. Like I mentioned though, fancy finishes aside, both phones are made from the more budget-friendly materials, and it's just going to be a matter of personal preference more than anything else. Taking a look around at everything else, on the left side, both phones have the SIM and SD card tray, but the Stylo 6 also has its volume buttons and Google Assistant button there as well. On the right side, both phones have their power buttons. The Moto G stylus also has its volume switches here, and its power button doubles as the fingerprint sensor as well. The fingerprint sensor on the Stylo 6 is on the back there beneath the camera setups, which I'll talk about in a bit. And down below, both phones have a headphone jack, USB-C port, speaker, and their styluses, of course. But one important thing to mention, the Stylo 6 offers a dual stereo speaker setup with an additional one in the earpiece there up front, while Motorola, for whatever reason, dropped stereo speakers on this new version of the Moto G stylus. And that's a bit of a bummer in my opinion. Here's just a quick sound comparison so you can get an idea. When it comes to the fingerprint setups and unlocking methods, while the placement of the rear sensor on the Stylo 6 has never really bothered me, I think the Moto G stylus's new setup is the better option. It's easier to feel for and find and just makes a lot of sense. Definitely a good change, and I think overall it is quite a bit faster in comparison as well. Also, Motorola brought back Face Unlock on their Moto G stylus this year, something LG Stylo 6 does not offer at all, and this unlocking method to me is even faster faster when you can utilize it. So that's great to see. Now, obviously, I think the whole reason you'd even be considering these two devices is that dedicated stylus support. So let's dive a little deeper into what these phones offer here with that. Both devices now have a nearly identical stylus setup located down below. They're both clickable, quick release setups that mimic Samsung's Note line. This is new to Motorola for this year, and while the styluses themselves look a little different, the main idea here is all the same. They are both super simple metal pointer tools, nothing more. They aren't connected to the phone in any way. They have no button controls, no special features. They are just small metal sticks with rubber tips. The Moto G stylus setup is a little bit taller. The Stylo 6 one has a thicker tip, but they are essentially one and the same. And their use cases with their respective smartphones are pretty similar too. To start off, you can utilize the styluses as an extension of your finger to tap, touch, and swipe your way through the phone and any apps you want to utilize. Beyond that, both phones have a dedicated menu that houses both stylus-specific apps and features and shortcuts to various other apps. And the stylus-specific stuff on both phones is pretty similar here too. Obviously, you have dedicated notes apps for writing out or drawing anything you'd like. While things look a little different, you can change pen tips, ink color, page colors, add text, basically do all the same stuff across each individual app. And I think this is what a lot of people like to utilize on these phones. There are other stylus-specific apps on each device as well, like Draw Chat on the Stylo 6 for sending messages, screenshot and GIF capture, a coloring book, scratch art, things like that. And you can also swap out any of these apps to add shortcuts to other apps you might want quick access to. All in all, each device has a couple stylus-specific apps and features unique to it, but in general, there's no real stylus-related advantage to either device, and you can download and use other non-Motorola and non-LG apps with the stylus as well anyway if you have something else you prefer. Now, like I mentioned before, since the styluses on both devices aren't paired with or otherwise made for the phones, there's going to be a significant amount of latency between the line you write on the screen and where the pen itself is being touched. I think both phones offer about the same sort of basic writing and drawing experience. You definitely have to sort of get used to that latency, but again, this is just kind of what's expected with this sort of setup. Interestingly enough, the actual feel you get with writing on each device is different too, and I sort of like the smoothness of the Stylo 6 a bit more than the Moto G stylus. Not sure if it's the pen tip or the screen or what, but that's my own personal opinion. All in all, both of these stylus smartphones offer about the same stylus experience and features. It's far from Samsung's Note line, of course, but for casual drawing and writing, and as an extension of your finger or as a precision tool, it's not a bad setup. And like I said, it's just not something you'd really get with any other smartphone right now. Inside, both of these phones have pretty different specs, and this definitely stems from the fact that these phones obviously have been released almost a year apart. The new Moto G stylus is powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon 687 chipset, an Adreno 612 GPU, 4 GB of RAM, and 128 GB of built-in storage. The Stylo 6, on the other hand, has the older MediaTek Helio P35 processor, either 3 or 4 gigs of RAM and just 64 GB of built-in storage. Both phones only currently support Android 10 as the latest update. They obviously have their own unique Motorola and LG related Android tweaks, but in practice, I think you can tell that the newer Moto G stylus is just going to be the quicker, more capable device. And this totally makes sense. Not only is the Stylo 6 the older device, but it's less powerful in general, and it's sort of a tough comparison to make. Now, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with the Stylo 6 as it is. I think there's enough potential here for casual users to browse social media, enjoy YouTube videos, utilize the stylus apps, of course. It's a decent performing phone for what it is, but if there were just one main consideration in going with the Moto G stylus, it would definitely be with performance. However, neither phone honestly is that great of a device. I even think the Moto G stylus should have had better internals to offer this year, but all in all, you certainly get more bang for your buck in comparison going with the Moto G stylus, and it'll be interesting to see how LG responds with a potential Stylo 7 this year. Also, interestingly enough, both phones do have the same 4,000 milliamp battery capacity inside, and in my time using both phones now for a bit, I can't really see either device having much of an advantage in longevity. I think the Moto G stylus more often than not will outlast the Stylo as you start to sort of push things a bit harder, but all in all, it's just not really a huge noticeable difference. In regards to the display, both these phones offer a similar 1080p viewing experience, but there are a couple of things to consider here. First off, size-wise, like I mentioned before, they're both 6.8-inch LCD screens, and they're both the same 2400 by 1080 resolution, but you might be able to tell that for whatever reason, at max brightness, the screen on the Stylo 6 is quite a bit brighter in comparison. Also, to me, the Stylo 6 display looks more colorful and punchy. That may or may not be something you personally enjoy, depending on your preferences, but to me, the Stylo 6 surprisingly seems to offer a better overall viewing experience, at least with the display itself. That huge camera notch across the top and more noticeable black bezels might take away from the experience a little bit, but all in all, I was surprised to see just how different the displays did look and how much more I personally liked the Stylo 6. Finally, let's talk cameras. Both these phones have multi-rear camera setups, but their approaches are very different. The new Moto G stylus offers a 48 megapixel main lens, 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens, 2 megapixel macro lens, and 2 megapixel depth sensor. The Stylo 6, on the other hand, has a 13 megapixel main lens around back, 5 megapixel ultra-wide, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. No macro lens here, but to me, that's totally fine. I don't ever use it anyway. And the selfie cameras are a bit different too. A 16 megapixel lens on the Moto G stylus and a 13 megapixel shooter on the Stylo 6. Now, capability wise, the new Moto G stylus definitely has the advantage here with things like 4K video recording, night mode, and a number of other shooting modes and features to choose from that aren't offered on the Stylo 6. And in practice, I think you can tell that the Moto G stylus is going to produce the better images overall, at least with the rear lens setup. There tends to be better color, more detail, better background and foreground separation with portrait shots, and with a much more capable main lens, this totally makes sense. However, with selfie shots, I think the Stylo 6 actually offers a more detailed shot here. All in all, both phones offer pretty decent camera setups considering the price point, but I think 9 times out of 10, the Moto G stylus is going to be the more capable, more feature-packed setup for those looking to get the most out of every shot. Surprisingly, even though these phones are almost a year apart now, they do still have a lot in common, and depending on what you prefer, I can kind of see going either way. The Stylo 6 is definitely the nicer looking phone, I think. The dual speaker setup is solid. The screen is objectively better, even with the bigger bezels and huge notch. It is the older, less powerful, less capable device, but you can also snag it at a huge discount, which might help. On the other hand, the Moto G stylus is the newer, much more capable device. Not flagship level, but you get a bit more bang for your buck. And I think in the end, that's the phone I'd choose right now. But I'm interested to see a potential Stylo 7 this year because that could totally change my opinion. But what do you guys think? Which phone would you prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys later.